Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And we are coming to you guys recording on a Saturday early in the afternoon, so before the Pistons play the Clippers, but very shortly after they played the Chicago Bulls I just want to jump right into it because I feel like our guy Isaiah Stewart has been just on a heater past few weeks. He's been playing out of his mind. And then against the Bulls, he gets big minutes, and all of a sudden it's the scorer. He couldn't be stopped offensively. That's not what you expect out of him. So I think we just got to open up the show waxing poetic about Isaiah Stewart.
Oh, 100%. I mean, 31 points in the win against the Bulls, and even more than what he did during the game. I love what he said after, just how his role isn't always gonna put up 30 points or 20 points a night. He knows what his role is, but when there's a need, when Jalen Duren's down, when Tobias Harris is down, and Isaiah Stewart is presented with the opportunity, he's going to take it. Led the team in field goal attempts without Cade Cunningham as he sat for that game. So, I mean, incredible win. Like, you should beat the Bulls, a team that you lost to on opening night, and it was great to see them get that win with really not much of their key contributors available.
Yeah, the Pistons keep doing this, right? Guys are out with injury. They didn't have Cade that night. Obviously, no Duren and Tobias Harris. And, Jaden Ivey gets elevated there into that starting lineup. I thought he struggled a little bit. It wasn't an amazing night from him, but still getting his feet under him. I think it was, he only played about 20 minutes. But, man, again, Isaiah Stewart in only 30 minutes. So he was better than a point-a-minute player because he scored 31 points in 30 minutes. He only missed 3 shots, went 14 of 17 from the floor, 2 of 3 from 3. He has 2 blocks, 1 assist, 1 steal. Really the only blemish here on his stat sheet is 3 rebounds. You think, he'd do a little bit more than that, but you've got guys like Paul Reed and Asar Thompson to, kind of pick up the slack there and get, 14 rebounds between the two of them, so to kind of lead the team with that. So, hey, What a great night again from these ragtag Pistons putting together wins with not the star guys.
Yeah, and Isaiah Stewart's gotten the flowers all season for what he's done defensively, and even taking threes at a much higher rate than he did last season. But it's really nice to see him just go off for an incredible night, and really in a game where he sort of had to. I mean, honestly, going into the game, I wouldn't have said, our offense is going to come from Isaiah Stewart tonight by any means. But like you said, when Jaden Ivey is struggling, you're not most of the time going to get a ton of offense from Asar Thompson. They needed a spark somewhere, and Stu provided that. So good for him. Like, he's been great all year, and to have this kind of night is just icing on top, honestly.
I think we really need to start pushing the Isaiah Stewart Defensive Player of the Year narrative, because I get that it's unusual because he's coming off the bench. Frankly, I would like that to change. I think he ought to just maintain the starting position down the stretch of the year, in my opinion. But we've talked about that before. Regardless, he has been unbelievable defensively. He's probably the best rim protecting big in the NBA right now. It's either him or Wembanyama in my book. I know Jay Huff's leading the way there with the blocks, but it's not as impactful, it doesn't feel like, for that Pacers team to me. So the fact that he's able to do this at 6'8", that he is, he's undersized, he's so physical, you cannot post him up, so it doesn't matter that size difference. He's such a pit bull defensively. He's the heart and soul of this team. I understand, we keep pushing for all NBA defensive team. I think he's got to be a shoo-in for that. But at this point, he is the absolute core of the aren't they the fourth best scoring defense in the NBA right now, with Duncan Robinson starting and playing, close to 30 a night. Like, I think we can start pushing that narrative. He has been unbelievable this season. Isaiah Stewart has.
Yeah, and I just tried to pull up some odds quickly on like defensive player of the year. It looks like Chet Holmgren and Rudy Gobert are heavily favored, which isn't a shocker. And Isaiah Stewart is a long shot according to Vegas, but at the same time, like everyone who's watching this team, who's leading the way in the East, knows how big of an impact Isaiah Stewart is defensively. And hey, he can do it on the other side of the floor at times too. But I'm with you there. I think it's going to be more of like a minutes thing for him. Like if he gets closer to that 30 a night, it's going to be hard. When the team is healthy, it'll probably be more in the 25-minute a night range. But when Wembanyama is missing all these games, I think if the Pistons keep themselves in this top tier of the East, he definitely has a say, because there are plenty of impactful defenders around the league, but I'm not sure there's one as impactful as Isaiah Stewart.
So this is like total speculation, but OG unnamed YouTube user has said here in our live chat something I have been thinking about. Like, so he says non-traditional sixth man of the year for Isaiah Stewart, and I've been thinking actually, because if he doesn't get defensive player of the year and the Pistons do continue to bring him off the bench, like do the voters, do they actually, does the NBA as the whole, the brain trust there, do they go, well, we need to give him something, right? Like we have to do something here for Isaiah Stewart. Could it be sixth man of the year? Like, it'd be really unusual, but I could see it, because if the Pistons maintain their position here at first in the Eastern Conference, Isaiah Stewart's going to need some hardware. He just does. They're going to have to figure out something.
It's funny because I mean, totally different players, but I had the same thought last year with Dyson Daniels. Like, I thought he was probably the defensive player of the year. He doesn't get that. He ends up getting most improved. And Isaiah Stewart, I mean, how big he is off the bench for the best team in the East. I think he definitely deserves credit there. And yeah, it looks like I tried to pull that up quickly too. It looks like Naz Reid and Jaime Jaquez are the favorites there, but I would say Jaquez has had a great year and taken a step offensively, but I would say what Stewart has done off the bench is the most game-changing across the league on a team that's top of the East. And I mean, if the Pistons do maintain their standing at the top of the East and they don't have any individual awards, and you can include like coach of the year for that too, but that would be pretty shocking to me.
Agreed. So let's jump into finishing up what we started last week. All right. So last week we had our New Year's resolutions. We had a great question from our guy, Epic Wayne, in the DBB comments, where he asked low-hanging fruit, but what are your New Year's resolutions for each of the players in the rotation, all 13 of them, JB Bickerstaff, Trajan Langdon, and the team as a whole? So what we had not gotten through, where we left off, we had just done Jalen Duren, and we had Cade Cunningham, JB Bickerstaff, Trajan Langdon, and then the team as a whole to go. So let's just start off with Cade Cunningham. And guys, by the way, if you're with us here in our live chat, be sure to put in your live questions as well. And hey, feel free to put in your New Year's resolutions for these guys too. We'll put those up on the screen, but we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can still. So this won't be taking up the whole show. Regardless, Cade Cunningham this season is averaging 26.7 points per game, 9.7 assists, and 6.2 rebounds per game. The interesting numbers, 2.3 stocks per game, which is pretty good. That's up 0.5 from last year. He's averaging 7.3 free throw attempts per game. He is shooting, let me grab his field goal percentage, 46%, we'll call it, from the floor, 34% from three, and where'd our free throw percentage go? 84% from the free throw line. What is your New Year's resolution for Cade Cunningham?
I use this one for a couple other players, but I think it's super relevant for Cade Cunningham. And obviously, when we're talking about a player like Cade, it's certainly nitpicking because he's been so incredible. But I think just to get to an even further step, and he's already gotten to being one of the best players in the East. I think he's certainly the best guard in the East at the very least. I think if he increases his 3-point percentage a couple percentage points, it'll go a long way for the team as a whole and just him as well, as he has the ball in his hands for the majority of the game and certainly in clutch time scenarios. And I mean, Cade has been right around average the past 2 seasons, 35 and a half, right around there for each of the past 2 years. Like you said, he's at 34% this year, making about 2 threes a game on just over 6 attempts. Hey, if he can get that closer to like 2.5, a little more, and just get in that 36, 37, 38 3-point percentage, I think it'll make his numbers even crazier. And just the one thing that I guess stands out to me offensively for Cade, at least, is he doesn't feel as, no one's really automatic from three, but it feels like some of those other guards in the East are able to make threes at a much higher rate, the superstar guards. So I just like to see Cade grow a little bit from there, but nothing big for him, honestly, just because of how incredible of a season he's having.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to echo a shooting element, but actually, it's not going to be the 3-pointers. So it's him sitting on, right around league average, like you said. I'm okay with that, with the volume and the style of threes that he takes. A lot of these are off the dribble pull ups, so it's naturally not going to be as high unless you're a player like Steph Curry or Trae Young. So I get that. I think that's fine. The 34, that encapsulates that really slow start he got off to this season. It's been much better basically since November. So I think that we're kind of trending back towards him getting to that 35, 36 range. I'm cool with that. For me, I really want that free throw percentage to go up, especially now that he's actually getting to the line quite a bit more. For his career, he's 85%. I just looked it up. That was right where he was at college too, right around 85%. His career high was an 87. It was an 86.9, but that was 2 seasons ago. If Cade's going to get to the free throw line 7+ times per game, which he should, right? Because he gets enough contact when he goes to the rim. So he's going to continue getting these calls. I would love to get him closer to 90% from the stripe. I know that that's asking a lot, but these are New Year's resolutions. He's a good shooter. He's got great form. It doesn't seem like he's a guy that, crumbles under pressure or anything weird like that. There's nothing mental going on. So if he could go from a above average for the free throw shooter to being automatic at the stripe where he gets there, and that's just points, I think that would go a long, long way for him. I mean, if you think about it, that'd be making about another half free throw per game. That gets him up over 27 points per game. I mean, just by doing that, just by making 6 percentage points more from the free throw line. That's really low-hanging fruit for me. I think it's accessible to him as well. So that would be my New Year's resolution for Cade. Now we get to kind of the interesting ones. Interesting because there's no stats to talk about. This is just kind of strategy stuff in a way. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but JB Bickerstaff, what's a New Year's resolution for Coach of the Year front runner? I would say JB Bickerstaff. Blake, you're muted.
Of course. But there's a couple ones that came to mind for me when it comes to JB Bickerstaff. Obviously, like you said, this is a little bit of a tougher one, but for me, and this might not, I mean, I don't think it's JB's fault by any means, but I'd like for him the rest of the season to put Jaden Ivey in a situation where it makes the front office's job a heck of a lot easier to figure out what to do with him. And again, JB isn't totally at fault for this. Like we've talked about before, he's on minutes restrictions. He's getting back to what he was after missing all that basketball. But to me, there are a lot of questions for this team in the future. And I think that they're set up in an incredibly good position. But I think Jaden Ivey is one of the bigger questions on what if he's going to be a part of this team moving forward. And Jalen Duren looks a heck of a lot like your second star right now once he gets back healthy. But could Jaden Ivey be that second scorer, that third scorer as a starter in this group for the full future? So right now, I think Jaden Ivey is the biggest unknown, and it's no fault to JB's, but I just like for him to make that question easier for Trajan Langdon, who we'll talk about in a minute here in the off season, or whether Ivey goes into restricted free agency, whatever that might look like. I just like for him to find a way to make that question easier to answer, obviously by giving Ivey more minutes, and the fact that this team is at the top of the East might make that a little bit more difficult if the medical staff or JB isn't able to put Ivey in a ton. I think he's certainly played his way into more minutes once he's fully cleared and everything. So I just like for him to keep that in the back of his mind while everything else is going on, and with this team that has much, much bigger goals than we initially thought heading into the season.
I like yours so much better than mine, Blake, because yours is actually like strategic in a way. And all I cared about here with JB Bickerstaff was just do everything in your power to make sure Isaiah Stewart is eligible for postseason awards. Because, like, that was an absolute shame last season that he did not have that minimum games played more than 20 minutes last season. He should have been on an all NBA defense team. He would have been if he had gotten that. And look, for Stu, like, there are monetary benefits that come with that. You know, part of the a miracle, I guess, that the Pistons have pulled off here is that locker room is so tight, Ryan, and it's so positive and strong right now. Well, if you, for some shaky reasons, disqualify Isaiah Stewart from a couple of bonuses for the second year in a row, I wonder how happy he'd be with that. Like I said, this is not strategic. There's nothing behind this. JB's doing a great job. I honestly, I have no critiques on what he's been doing, strategically, what he's been doing with the rotation so far. I thought everything's been very sharp, very smart, and I want to see him do it again in the playoffs, because you have to shift things around in the playoffs, right? So I'm curious to see how he handles a now more serious playoff run, with that being the goal for the team when he gets there. But that's not a New Year's resolution for him. I'm just curious to see how he do it. So for me, the New Year's resolution, Isaiah Stewart needs to be eligible 2 years in a row. Do it again next year, right? Because again, with these, we're talking about the entire calendar year of 2026. So get him off to a good start on the year following as well. Of course, there's injuries, so that's just do whatever you can for Stu. That's mine. Trajan Langdon, what do you got for him? Because now we're looking at trade deadline and upcoming off season.
It's tough because my mind is flip-flopped on this so much, on whether like we have basketball XTR in the chat talking about trading Ivy, Tobias, and a pick for a 4 like Lauri Markkanen or Jaren Jackson. And honestly, maybe even as recent as a month ago, I was probably in the same boat. And I think we saw recent reporting from our guy Omari mention that the Pistons likely aren't thinking about making a big move like that and giving up their future and potentially messing with this energy that they have right now and shaking up the locker room a bit. So it's funny because I just wouldn't have said this like maybe even a week ago, but don't give up this team's how this how well this team is set up for the future for immediate success. And I think there's an argument to the other hand of that, because they're at the top of the East. There are some holes that he could address, and maybe you do need to give up draft picks to go and get those type of players. But I honestly just want to see how far this team can go at this point, for better or for worse, and see how it shakes out. Because if they don't get to a certain point, you can always use the assets and draft picks and space that you have available after this season to adjust the roster from there. We thought the roster had like incredible chemistry last year, and there were some changes. Now we don't have Malik Beasley or Tim Hardaway Jr., and you add in Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. So I think as long as the quote unquote core of this team can stay together, I think it's something that you don't really want to mess with. And also, like, there could be a marginal move that Trajan can make, like he did last year, bringing in Dennis Schroeder for next to nothing. Like, I'm okay with that. But if the Pistons do push all their chips in, like, I think that they're set up to do that once, whether it's this year in the off season or whenever it does come. I just don't think I'm ready to make that big swing right now and potentially mess with everything this team has accomplished.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So just in an effort to be different, to give a different answer, I'll say, you know, let's find a solution there at the 2-guard spot. I love what Duncan Robinson's done, but he's very much a specialist and he's a very poor defender. If you could find either at the deadline or over the offseason someone that is a legitimate 3-and-D option at that 2-guard spot, I think that the team would be better off for it. And otherwise, I'm right there with you. Let's just see. Omari had a great quote in one of his more recent articles. Can't remember the title of it, but you guys should go and look it up, right? Go try to find this. But when he was talking about, not pushing all the chips into the middle, he said something to the effect of that this team, these young guys, they've earned the right to see how far they can go. I completely agree with that. I think this is the year, right? So whatever we figure out here in the playoffs, this is more or less how far they can go. And that's just a time thing. You're going to have, theoretically, odds are high that Jaden Ivey's playing on a qualifying offer. You're probably extending Jalen Duren at this point. You're looking at Asar as needing maybe extension conversations now too. So, the clock is ticking for this group of young players in Detroit, but this is the one postseason run that they can make. So let's see what they can do. And then from that, you're going to learn, right? You're going to learn what the team maybe needs to have added or subtracted based off of this. So I'm right there with you with that. Let's look at the team, though. And this is kind of going to the title of our episode, actually. What should the Pistons playoff goals be? What should the team's goals in general be? What's the New Year's resolution for this Pistons roster?
So we'll talk about the playoffs in a bit. So I'm gonna keep this one just to this season after this incredible start. I'd love to see that, and I think it should be a goal for this team to maintain and earn the number 1 seed in the East. I mean, there's still a ton of basketball left to be played, but through 37 games, you have a 4-game cushion in the top spot of the East. You have the second best record in basketball behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. You're one of 2 teams in the NBA with the Thunder that hasn't hit 10 losses yet. And we're almost midway through January. The East, I think there are some teams that are proving tougher than we initially thought, like the Celtics, the Raptors, the Sixers. And then on the other hand, some teams that are going on the other end of that spectrum. But I seriously think that the Pistons can maintain and go into the playoffs as the number 1 team in the East. Obviously, we wouldn't know who they would play in the playoffs right away with the play-in tournament. So even with the number 1 seed, you might get a tough draw in the first round. And I think that there should be plenty of additional goals beyond just going into the playoffs as the number 1 seed. But if you would tell me 2 years ago after the Monty Williams year that this team would earn the number 1 seed in the East 2 years later, I'd think you're crazy. So I think that should definitely be a goal and would just prove to this team they already know that they can win and can compete in this league with the best of them and really contend. But I think if you do finish as the number 1 team in your conference, it just makes an even bigger statement than they already have.
I'm basically gonna steal Piston Cups in our live chat what he says. So he said, just got here, but I'll answer the prompt. The playoff goal is the Eastern Conference Finals or the finals, right? That's where I'm basically at with this team. You know what? Let's put it in a fun way. Lay the foundations for another Pistons Eastern Conference Finals streak. Right? Like let's lay the foundations now for this is the first year. And then, hey, maybe the Pistons can make the next like 3 or the next 4, right? Do what that going to work team did. Establish yourself as that, historic franchise again. I think that would be great. And that starts this year, right? So I think that this is a reasonable goal for this team right now. Like you've just said, they really should be able to maintain that number 1 seed going into the playoffs. I think you look at the rest of the field here, and is there really another team that can really challenge the Pistons maybe in a playoff series for this year? I mean, I know you start looking next year, Halliburton's back. Tatum might even be back in the playoffs this year. There's all that stuff. That's great. But this year, I don't know. And the Pistons really just curb stomped the Knicks last week. So I do think they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's a reasonable goal. Beyond that, maybe they do come out of the East this year. Maybe not. I don't know. Right. There's a lot that happens between now and then. But if we're just talking goals, I think that's what it should be. I think this team needs to look ahead and say, we want to be like that going to work team. We want to make the Eastern Conference Finals as a guarantee every year for some streak here. So I think that's what they start off this season. Do you have any final thoughts, final comments on our New Year's resolutions here?
No, I mean, I think just in terms of the playoffs, because I didn't really touch on that. Like if we're talking about this team potentially getting out of the Eastern Conference and into the NBA Finals, like obviously a ton of work before that ever happens. But even if you do see the Thunder, I mean, we saw how close this magical Pacers team that came out of nowhere came to beating them. So I really think anything could happen in a 7-game series. So the team already is thinking about championship goals, which is crazy to say. But I wanted them to win a playoff series heading into the year. I thought that was the next step and then build on that. But yeah, especially with how the conference is this year, and we'll see how things shake out after the trade deadline, if there's any major restructuring around the East. But I'm right there with you. I mean, I think Boston would be an incredibly tough matchup in the playoffs. And even the Knicks too, just with how crazy Madison Square Garden was last year. But I think this Pistons team is on another level than they were a year earlier. And they have earned the right to have title aspirations.
All right, let's get to this comment here from Gregory Wagner in the DBB comments. It says, where do you see our record standing come the All-Star game with the way that the Pistons are playing right now? And because we've gotten a couple of questions here looking ahead at the trade deadline, actually, let's kind of answer both of those because it's right around the same time. But if you're looking ahead, it's basically kind of about 13 games, right? So they have the Clippers 16. This evening. Again, we are recording here on the afternoon of Saturday. But then they've got the Suns, the Pacers, the Celtics, Pelicans, Rockets, Kings, Nuggets, Suns again, Warriors, Nets, Nuggets, and Wizards, just about. So, let's say the next 13 games here, it doesn't look too difficult, but obviously a lot of good teams there in that stretch. Where do you think the Pistons will be sitting come the All-Star break?
Yeah, so just so they do have 16 games before the break. So standing at 28-9, I think it's almost just a very not huge expectations to say they should go at least 10-6 over those games, and they don't. There are some tough matchups in there, of course, and there will be off nights and potentially drop a game you didn't think that you were going to. But even in that sense, I think 10-6 is totally reasonable to say. Maybe they should even be better than that. But if they did go 10-6 over before the break, that would put them at 38-15 before the All-Star break. So that would maintain the standings at the top of the East unless any other team goes on a crazy run, which certainly could happen. But I think that's my goal. Win 10 more games before the break. Hopefully more, but I think 10 is a reasonable number to shoot for.
So I don't know exactly how reasonable it would be. And this is only truthfully going to be 2 more wins than what you just explained. But I do think that the Pistons as a team, their goal should be 40 wins by the All-Star break. That's more or less the pace that they're on right now. And you just want to continue to maintain basically the cadence that they have so far this season. And Jalen Duren should be coming back relatively soon. Omari Sankofa, the Free Press, he just reported this morning that Duren was working on the side at practice. So he's clearly in his ramp up period again, which is a good sign. They didn't report how severe the ankle sprain was. Usually that means it's really not that big of a deal. So hopefully he can be back here pretty quickly after that 1 week reevaluation is up. Cade Cunningham is still kind of out with that wrist injury that happened against the Knicks. Well, I guess he's not out, right? He's still questionable, but questionable is usually not great. So we'll see. But regardless, he won't be out all that long either. I think the Pistons are relatively healthy, and you kind of look at the teams that they're playing. There are no world beaters in there. They don't play the Thunder yet, so you'd be very scared of the Thunder. I am worried about this Clippers game this evening because they've been playing very well. They are on a back-to-back though. So, maybe the Rockets are a great team, but other than that, it's a lot of beatable basketball teams. And if they can get to 40 wins there before the All-Star break, that almost locks you in to really being a strong favorite. Like, it would be a bit of a letdown if they're sitting at 40 wins and they sacrifice that first seed by the end of the season. So just to continue where they're going, the direction they're heading, I think that's a good one. Again, I don't know how reasonable. It's 12-4 over the next 16. So that is asking a lot, but I think they can do it. So that's where my head would be. Speaking of All-Star break, this is another one here from Gregory Wagner. It says, do you believe we will have 2 All-Stars with both Cade and Jalen Duren making the game? It says, does JD really deserve it because he's a top 12 player in the Eastern Conference, or does he benefit from the Pistons having the best record in the Eastern Conference?
I mean, I think if the Pistons weren't in the standing that they were right now, it would be much harder to make the All-Star case for Jalen Duren. But even if they were, I think he'd still be in the conversation. He's right next to top 5 across the league in terms of rebounders. The only rebounder better than him in the Eastern Conference is Karl Anthony Towns. And when you look at the East, it's honestly hard to come up with those 12 guys. Like, there are a lot of good candidates, but all of them have a case against them, and a lot of them is their teams are not great. Like, one of those being Michael Porter Jr. Josh Giddey had his name there before he was slated to miss some time. You're definitely going to have some newcomers like Jalen Johnson, and Giannis has missed a ton of time too. I mean, he'll still be there, but I do think Jalen Duren is deserving of a reserve all-star spot, even if the Pistons weren't the number one seed, just because of the leap that he's taken. And he's averaging close to 18 points a game, and it's been higher than that at points. And he's had incredible stretches over the regular season, multiple 30-point games. So I think he's an all-star, not an all-star starter, but a reserve. And I think he's much, much deserving of it. And I don't think it would be anything close to like, okay, the Pistons are the top team in the East. They've performed a lot better than we're expected. We need to get 2 guys from their team. I don't think it's that situation at all. I think just Jalen Duren deserves some credit and some honors himself for this season that he's having.
Yeah, like, honestly, I don't really think that it's fair to separate the two narratives, right? So is he a top 12 player in the East, or does he benefit from having the Pistons having the Eastern Conference best record? Like, I do think legitimately it's one of those where you have to have those in tandem. He's the second best player on the best team in the Eastern Conference. That's an all-star. It has to be. That player almost has to be an all-star, kind of by definition of what this sport is. You don't get to being the best team in the Eastern Conference without having at least 2 players that you could make a strong argument are top 12 in their conference. It can't, like, it just doesn't happen in basketball all that often. And that's, like, there's some weird things in the past, like with Kyle Korver making an all-star game one year for the Atlanta Hawks. That was bizarre, right? Like, I get that. But when you're making he's only there because the team's good, I think I start thinking of guys like Kyle Korver making an all-star game. I don't think about, he's the second best player on the team, averaging 18 points, over 10 rebounds a night, right? Like that's not the guy that I think gets that label. So I think that he is arguably in the top 12 in the Eastern Conference because he has been a impactful contributor to the best team in the conference. Like that's just kind of what it is to me. But YouTube user does bring up a good point. So remember, there's an international versus USA component to this all-star game. But I'm still kind of unclear on how that all is working out this year. Like, how does this factor in?
So if there's not enough, there's going to be enough American players. But if there's not enough on either side, then I believe it's I just looked this up quickly. Adam Silver will select additional all-stars to join either group to reach the minimum amount. Those amounts are 16 U.S. players and 8 international players. But even if you say, okay, Jalen Duren's on the wrong side of that, like Jalen Duren has had a better season than Bam Adebayo and Evan Mobley, just if you solely look at the numbers and don't even factor in that the Pistons are the best team in the East. And yeah, those other players are much better defenders than Jalen Duren currently is. But I just think he's an all-star. And hey, ESPN tried to predict the rosters about a month ago now, and they said Duren was a near lock. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything, but after the start of the season that Duren had and just those incredible stretches, like, has he really dropped off that much to be fully off the all-star map? I don't think so. I know he's missing some time, but some other guys have missed as well, and I just think he's clearly one of the best bigs in the East, so he deserves a spot.
All right, let's keep talking about JD because we got a question here from YouTube user. I'm going to throw this one up first. This is from MGoBlue7. It says Duren's points per game by month. So in October, it was 14.8. November was 21.5. And now December was 16.2. Ask which one is he? And then now to the point, right? Because we're talking about him as an all-star. That naturally brings up the follow-up question of, well, how much do you extend him for, if you extend him at all? So YouTube user says that he is very concerned that this front office is going to overpay Jalen Duren on an extension and end up regretting it, like Andre Drummond or DeAndre Ayton when they signed their rookie max extension. So how do you think this all maybe folds into the Jalen Duren contract extension conversation? I know we talked last week on kind of that Sengun mark, right? Somewhere right around that 33 to like $37 million as a salary seems to be that range that you and I were in agreement over. So, you can continue to add more color onto that, but what do you think maybe is a risk of extending a player like Jalen Duren? And again, how does that all-star season factor into this conversation, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think the year that Duren is having definitely impacts his contract talks, because I think entering the year, and we saw this by the fact of neither Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey getting a contract extension in the first offseason that they were eligible. Like, I think he cemented himself as a true piece of this team that you want to lock down beyond his rookie contract. Like we're bringing up here, I think the number does matter, because obviously you're not going to want to pay really any center that's not like Anthony Davis coming off his rookie contract, that amount of money. And I think the Pistons will be able to get Jalen Duren under the max. Like, he shouldn't be getting anything close to the max, just because of the position he plays and the skill set that he holds, honestly. And yeah, I think those, like, Sengun had a better case to get a max contract extension, and he didn't get that. And yeah, YouTube user brings up the CBA too. Like, that certainly helps. Like, there's a number that will allow the Pistons to keep building and taking this team to the next step. And I think that there's a number somewhere in there that would make sense both for Jalen Duren as well as the team as a whole. So I think it just makes Jalen Duren's contract talks a heck of a lot easier. And I hope he'd agree to a pretty solid salary the Pistons would pay him. I don't think he's necessarily the type that would want to just hit the open market and take the most money he can get. Maybe his agents think a different way, but I just think the season he's had has made the talks a lot easier, hopefully. It could go the other way if Jalen Duren wants more money, but yeah, and in terms of just how he's played per month, like we've talked about at length, there have been times where he hasn't been as aggressive in terms of getting up shots, and he's a good passer for his position. So like passing up some looks and wanting to just make the right basketball play, which I credit him for. But I think his offensive output is solely about like being aggressive. And if you look at the drop off from November to December, really the major difference there is the amount that he was getting to the free throw line. Like, he got there nearly half the amount less in December compared to November. His field goal attempts and makes are nearly identical. So I think that's something that he can maybe just be a little bit more aggressive near the hoop and try to get to the line a little bit more. So I think he knows what he needs to do to be successful. And I think the coaching staff does too. And they can try to get him in the right spot to make those things happen. But I think we've seen the type of player that Jalen Duren can be, and it's just about maintaining that. I'm pretty confident that he will. And if he does, that should make contract talks pretty easy.
Yeah, the free throw thing is funny that you brought that up, because I think he's actually getting into the difficult to referee space as a player. because he's so big and now he does so much with the ball in his hands. It's like, it's similar with Giannis. Everyone gets upset with the number of free throws per game Giannis takes, but like he gets fouled more than that. There's nothing you could do. He's just not fair. Like, I mean, if you go like a crazy example, you go back to like Shaquille O'Neal. Like, he gets fouled every time he touches the ball, but you can't call all of them. I think Duren's kind of in that same space, not to that extent, but I think it kind of swang up during November to a unsustainable rate. And then the league, the referees kind of figured out, well, we can't call everything on it, so we need to bring it back down. I think it's going to settle somewhere in the middle between those two, at least in terms of the free throw time. I don't think, to my eye, he's not done anything different. I wish he would shoot the ball more. I wish he would be more aggressive. But when he does get his shot attempts, it's not like he's now like fading away from contact or anything. It's just the call isn't coming in the same. So I think that's going to change. Regardless, though, looking at the contract number, I think one big thing that does get a little lost, at least in my opinion, with the conversations I've seen surrounding this and that I've had with people surrounding this, like friends, family, things along those lines, is like, look, he's not going to get a post rookie max extension. That's not in the cards. Like this $35 million per year number that we're all kind of talking about and anchoring our conversation with, is that came from his agent. That was leaked out by his agent during the month of November that, hey, we've upped our demands to $35 million. I can't remember who broke that story, but that was the context. So it's his camp that came out and said, hey, actually, we want a little bit more. We think that our target number should be 35. And recognize that the player's agent's always going to be on the high end. So like you got to start asking the question of, okay, in this new CBA, is Jalen Duren worth $8 million more than Tobias Harris? Because if your answer is yes, then you should pay him $34 million and you should be pretty ecstatic about it. And that's only $1 million of a discount only, LOL. Only $1 million of a discount from the number that his agent is pushing for. I think this whole conversation is really, it needs to center on, can he be that second option? Because to me, if that's what he can prove here, it doesn't necessarily up his cash, but what it does is it frees up cash for the rest of the roster. If you're paying your second option like a third option, which is realistically what that 35 number is, well, then you've just found a cheat code to go get another really good starter that another good team may not have been able to do. And in this CBA right now, the direction the NBA is heading, it looks to me like depth wins the day. Right? We've seen that with the Pistons this year. We've seen that obviously with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Celtics this year missing their big superstar in Jason Tatum. It's their depth that's carrying them right now. Like the teams that have more depth are the teams that are winning a lot of games. If Jalen Duren truly is your second option and you're paying him more like a third option, well, then you've just found an additional $10 million that you could pay for a depth piece. And that's a huge win for Detroit. So I don't really think that the number is all that problematic long-term for the team. He's not getting $50 million. It's nowhere near that. It's more of the, Tobias Harris with inflation is kind of what's going on with that. So I'm not too worried about it. I don't think it's a big deal, but I do think you still have that huge question hanging over everything of, what are you paying him for? Like, what role is he actually going to fill? And now depending on that answer, things can kind of change. Maybe you do want to be a little bit more aggressive and pushing him down closer to 30 million if he proves over these playoffs that he can't be that number two. But we got to figure that out. Since we're talking contracts, kind of interesting one. This is from I Am the Big Cheese. How much is Asar Thompson's next contract likely to be worth? And then also the follow-up of whose next deal is more expensive, Asar Thompson or Isaiah Stewart. Both good questions. What do you think on those?
For Asar, like it's so tough because there's players like Jalen Johnson out there who got $30 million in their extension, $30 million a year. And the Hawks just traded Trae Young to build around Jalen Johnson. So that's obviously a great deal for the Hawks. And then there's Christian Brown with the Nuggets, who signed a rookie extension of 5 years, 125 million. So 25 mil a year. I think Asar would be somewhere around that Christian Braun deal. And that's a very recent comp. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at who made this. Big Cheese mentioned that he wouldn't be surprised if it's in the 22 to $25 million range. That's where I'm at too. Like, I think the Braun one is good. He's obviously a better shooter, much better shooter than Asar Thompson. And even though he's having a little bit of a down year, but Asar is much better of a defender. So I think you're just giving up a little to get a little more somewhere else. So I think that $25 million number is right around the range that Asar Thompson's next contract would be worth. And man, Isaiah Stewart versus Asar Thompson is a hard question. I tend to lean toward Asar Thompson just because he's the younger player. He's getting a rookie extension, and the role he's been playing for this team that should only grow over time. But Isaiah Stewart's going to deserve a pretty solid contract himself. So I think it'll be fairly close numbers, but I think Asar's could be a little bit higher in the terms of total value and maybe total years as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on thinking it's going to be lower than most people would think. With Asar, like the offense is really concerning. I think if you're looking at paying a lot of salary to him as a player, like at this point, as amazing as he is as a defender, he's probably the fourth best player on this team, fourth most important player on this team. I'd say the top three seems pretty clearly to be Cade, obviously, then Duren and Isaiah Stewart in some order after him. And like you could make an argument that Duncan Robinson has been more vital to this team's success so far this season than Asar Thompson. I don't know if I would make that argument. I think it's close, but like it exists. You could make that. You could be. It's possible. Is kind of what I'm saying. So like, do you want to extend that guy that maybe he's your fourth or fifth best player and he's sitting at $30 million? I don't know. So I do think that number is going to get pushed down. It'd be great if it could be closer to 20 with how much the cap's going up all the time. Okay, maybe it gets to 25, but I do think maybe you need to be, if you're Langdon, maybe you're pushing to get a bargain on Asar Thompson more so than you would be on a guy like, say, earlier, like we were talking with Jalen Duren, like 35. That's what you want. I'm more okay with that. Great. That's a good number. With Asar, if he comes in asking for 30, like, I think you really need to work hard to negotiate that down. As for whose deal could be more expensive, Asar or Stu, I really do think it should. Isaiah Stewart's probably in for a big raise at this point. As long as he can kind of prove he can play close to 30 minutes a night and maintain the health, which he's done before, so no real reason to expect that he can't. I'm actually unsure where this Isaiah Stewart is injury prone narrative has come from, but I've seen it a lot. I don't agree with it. So I think that if he could get up and minutes per game more, then now you're really looking at a player that's going to earn solid starter money. So I bet that could be a little bit bigger. I wanted to real quick, Blake, because I don't want to misspeak with this, but we've got our guy Gregory Wagner asked if we're allowed to trade, if the Pistons are allowed to trade the 2026 first round pick because they just surrendered last year's pick. I do believe that they are, but correct me if I'm wrong there before we go to our voicemail.
Yeah, because that responsibility to it was the Knicks, right? Was fulfilled. There's like no stipulations on the Pistons 2026 first rounder and the fact that they own their 2027 and 2028. Like, you can make a deal for that. Obviously, if you do trade any of the other picks and different deals, and that impacts the 2026 first round pick. And with how this team's is currently standing, the Pistons first round picks are getting a lot less valuable, which is kind of a good thing in the larger picture. But yeah, no responsibilities tied to any of their firsts right now, I believe. And it's just some of the second round picks that they've got through trades or traded their own.
All right. So let's get to a voicemail question here from Jacob.
Hey guys, Jacob here, longtime Pistons fan since the Grant Hill era, revealing my age a little bit. And I really like you guys' style, super straightforward, no gimmicks. So keep it up. My question, and probably a question on a lot of Pistons fans' minds, is should we make a trade at all? After the Miami game last week, I thought we needed to make a big splash, someone like Markkanen from Utah or Michael Porter Jr., but then now after these last three games, Cleveland, New York, and Chicago, now I don't know if we want to mess up what seems to be working. So I'm really torn, and would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work.
All right, so Blake, I think the way to frame this is the following, because we know from Omari's reporting, from comments that Langdon himself made before the season started, that it doesn't seem like the Pistons are all that interested in making a big move. So I think the way to frame this question from Jacob, shout out for him to using the phone line, we love when we get these, is, are they right? Like, is Langdon correct for not wanting to make a big splash at this year's deadline?
I think he is, and shout out to you, Jacob. Great question, and for the kind words, really appreciate it. But I think Langdon and his front office have the right frame of mind, because we've seen guys like Desmond Bane and Michael Bridges go for really a team just giving up any future draft capital that they can control for the next 5 years. I don't think the Pistons want to do that, because we think this team is built for long-term success. So maybe that makes them more willing to give up their draft picks, but you never know what can happen. And honestly, there's just not a reason to do that right now with how well this team has played. And like you brought up earlier, Wes, like Indiana isn't a threat this year, but when Tyrese Halliburton comes back, then you have to worry about them next year. So maybe this year is a little bit different than others, but you can always, if you keep your draft capital and your young players, don't move off of them soon, you can always make a different decision at a later date. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'll be honest, like I was getting a little impatient, maybe waiting for them to make some sort of move and put a competitive roster around Cade Cunningham, but that just happens sort of organically. So I don't really see a reason to mess with it. And I think Michael Porter Jr.'s trade value has only went up since he got to Brooklyn, and Lauri Markkanen. The Jazz are in such an interesting situation because they kind of want to be bad because their pick needs to fall in the top 8, or they give it up to the Thunder. And if they don't give it up this year, then they don't have to give it up. Like they lose that responsibility. So I think that they'd want to be bad. I don't think that necessarily brings Lauri Markkanen's price down a ton, just because you're dealing with Danny Ainge. And I think there's going to be plenty of other teams interested in Lauri Markkanen who maybe couldn't put together a better package than the Pistons, but are willing to give up more than the Pistons would, which I agree with. Like Markkanen has a big contract, and we're just talking about all these guys on the roster who you are going to want to pay coming up. So I think they're in the right frame of mind. I think you will probably still see a trade, but I think it'll be a depth trade. Like, I'm trying to think of names. I don't know why why TJ McConnell is coming to mind, but just like a player who provides some depth that can help you in the playoffs, especially for a team that has a little bit of playoff experience, but is still young and is trying to take themselves to the next step. So I think you'll see a similar trade deadline to last year and nothing drastic. And I think the front office is thinking in the right way with that.
Yeah, I agree. Like they really are so far ahead of schedule. To me, that brings along two important facts, I guess. The first is that at least I still have a lot of questions about this roster, right? Like, we've talked about it at length already on the show. Can Jalen Duren be your second option offensively? We've got 1 month of proof that says, yes, definitively he can. But the question is, like, can he really, right? Like, can he stack it? Can he do it all the time? And he's close. He's very close, but we got to see it. And if he starts doing it in the regular season, well, then now we got to see it in the playoffs. So you got that question there. Asar Thompson, can he find a way to be passable offensively? What's Ron Holland going to be? You're wondering about Jaden Ivey, right? Now that he's getting more and more healthy seemingly every single game, like, does he factor in? Is he a six man? Is he a starter? Like, is he a trade chip? I don't know. We don't know these things yet. And we've not even gotten to, like, Isaiah Stewart, right? Like, is he the solution there at the 4? Do you need to keep him being the backup 5? We still don't know. So there's so much still that's up in the air with this roster. And the Pistons are in a great spot because ideally in the NBA, you draft, develop, and then augment, right? Like you get the guys, you get the talent in, you develop the talent, and then you make some decisions on how to get that talent to fit together as best as it possibly can. And they're just so far ahead of schedule with that. Like, you look at this offseason, you say, well, okay, Jalen Duren gets a big old extension. He gets $35 million, whatever it is. Well, Tobias Harris is coming off the books. Their books are still super clean. If you want to make a big trade the year after that, like, you still can. You can still do that. You can make a big trade in the offseason and like a sign and trade deal with Jaden Ivey if you want to do that. They've got so many options. And to your point, it just doesn't have to be right now. So I do still look at this season as an opportunity for them to answer some of these more difficult questions about the guys that they have and how these guys all fit together. And then, starting this upcoming offseason is kind of when you look at, all right, well, hey, the Pistons, great, they made the Eastern Conference Finals, but they got bounced and they didn't make the finals. And we know the East is going to be more tough next year. So how do we do it again, right? How do we become even more of a threat? What little changes and tweaks need to be made from that point to grow even further? Because the team is so young, and you'll have more answers at that time. So I think it's weird that you're kind of playing that game with a team that's first in the East and has a real shot to make the NBA Finals. But if you think about it, it's kind of a luxury to have a roster that is this talented, that is doing things like sitting at first in the Eastern Conference, maybe having 2 All-Stars this season, and maybe having 2 All-NBA defense players this season too, right? That's the roster, that's the talent that you have, and you still have the flexibility to see where it goes and make your decisions accordingly. Yeah, it's like YouTube user says, I think the playoffs are going to tell us a lot. I agree. I'm really looking forward to that. Really quickly, I want to end on this because I know we've kind of gone over this week. We were hoping to be a little bit shorter since we had a long one last week, and here we are. You guys just keep giving us too great of questions. From I Am the Big Cheese, because I don't know how much longer this situation is going to be true. So let's squeeze it in. What should we expect from Jaden Ivey as long as Caden Cunningham is out? Because Jaden Ivey no longer has that minutes restriction. And indeed, we've seen that he's stacked a couple of 20-plus minute a night games now at this point. So as long as Cade remains out, what are we looking for from Jaden Ivey?
Man, just like be a little be aggressive and take opportunities when you have that runway. Like you mentioned earlier, a little bit of a rough go with it against the Bulls, but that was okay because Isaiah Stewart had the game that he had, and Duncan Robinson makes 4 threes. But I think that if you don't have Cade and you don't have Duren, where is your offense going to come from any given night? Jaden Ivey is a great candidate to be the most consistent spark that this team has and take over, honestly, lead scoring responsibilities when you don't have your two all-stars. I mean, he had a great game against the Knicks with 16 points in 22 minutes off the bench. So obviously the shot's not always going to fall. We've seen him be a bit up and down throughout his career, but I just want to see him take the opportunity that he would have when you're missing all those shots in that offense that you don't have and is there for the taking without Cade and Duren, and then take advantage of it. I mean, that's a lot easier said than done, but at least be a little bit more aggressive and try to be that offensive spark that this team needs while your all-star players are out.
To me, I think that this is really tough because what the team needs and what is best for Jaden Ivey, I don't think that they align. And it's just unfortunate because the team, if Cade's out and Duren's out and Harris is out, they need offense. They need someone to score. Stewart looks like he might be out this evening against the Clippers with an illness. Like, man, they need offense. And I get that. And Jaden Ivey is, a super talented player, but it's just so early. It doesn't look to me like his legs are back under him yet. Even against the Bulls, where admittedly he didn't have his best night. He played 20 minutes, though, only 20 minutes as a starter, and he wasn't all that efficient or aggressive from the floor. I just think he still needs a little bit of time to get himself back and healthy. So I think the expectation for Ivy, even with Cade, like it should probably just stay the same, right? We want him to get back to the player that he was, and health-wise, it's still going to take a little bit of time. So now that he's off the minutes restriction, let's have Jaden Ivey start getting 25 minutes, right? Instead of 20. That's kind of the next step for him. Continue to get his sea legs back, continue to recruit that explosiveness back. We see it flash a little bit more now, right? But let's see that consistently. I think that those are still the goals for him, and for the Pistons, for JB, it stinks because I guess you got to look at Marcus Sasser maybe as a spark plug scorer. Could you get Dennis Jenkins going again? Maybe Ron Holland can step up. He had a nice night against the Bulls, 5 for 11 from the floor. Maybe there's something there that they can expand with him. So I think it's unfortunate that the timing of all this, it's still Jaden Ivey needs patience in my book. I don't think that he's ready to have JB look at him and say, all right, you need to put up 17 shots tonight. I don't think that that's good for Ivy right now. It might be in another couple weeks, but Cade will be back by then.
So give the ball to Isaiah Stewart, basically.
If he plays, He plays. I mean, I'm worried about that tonight. But with Cade, it's just a wrist injury. He might be back the game after the Clippers. So it's such a short-term thing. I don't know. They're in a tough spot on this game this evening. I'm hopeful that by the time this episode airs, we'll both look like idiots here for being worried about it. But right now, man, I don't know where this offense is coming from. That's going to be tough.
Hey, just keep Kawhi Leonard under 50 points, which will be much more difficult without Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren and Tobias, but that should be the goal. That can't happen, especially on your home floor.
Yep. And hopefully it doesn't. I don't know. That game. We'll end on this because we're kind of off topic now. But holy cow, he was unbelievable in that last game against the Pistons. They were, especially in the second half, Ausar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, they were playing fantastic defense.
Yeah,
Kawhi Leonard was just making the shots anyway.
He was unstoppable.
The number of possessions where I remember sitting there going, I don't think you could have defended it better, right? I'm not even sure if you run the tape back and you ask Ausar Thompson, what could you have done differently here? Genuinely, I think the answer was nothing.
Yeah.
And yet he makes it anyway. What a night for Kawhi Leonard. Let's avoid that in LCA.
Hey, just prediction, Kawhi Leonard will not score 50 points against the Pistons this time. If he does, that will be a problem. I'm worried about the game like you as well, but
you got to knock on wood now for something.
Yeah, I just knocked on my desk, but hopefully, like you said, once this airs and the game is over, we just look dumb, which would be great in this case. Reminder that everyone can call our voice line to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. Shout out to our guy Jacob for using that this week and with a great question. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.